Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Vanessa Martinez, and I am one of the mothers against Greg Abbott. I am from the San Antonio, Texas area, and I am a mom of three. I work in human resources. I take part in local government by acting as a commissioner on San Antonio's Southside District 3 Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women. And I also do a little bit of activism work. So I am on the Lilith Fund Board of Directors. We are a nonprofit that funds abortion. And I'm also on the Community Engagement Committee for Planned Parenthood of South Texas. So today our session is aimed at helping Texans interested in voting current Republicans out of office by offering important discussions aimed at achieving that goal. So we want to use this topic to discuss how we can unite as voters in the next Texas election. With us today, we have really two amazing women. So Selena Montoya was twice nominated as the Democratic nominee for Texas House District 121, one of the 9 targeted seats during the 2020 election. Selena's leadership has involved having served as the president of Junior League of San Antonio, on the board of Landa Gardens Conservancy, as co-chair of the San Antonio Area Foundation Women and Girls Development Fund, board member of the San Antonio Public Library Foundation, and Girl Scouts of Southwest Texas. She fundraises for multiple nonprofits and committees, including her home church, Laurel Heights United Methodist, and she also serves as a mentor for the campaign school at the LBJ School of Public Affairs and is a graduate of the campaign school at Yale. Selena is a lifelong San Antonian who only left to attend Northwestern University, where she earned her BS in journalism and was a fellow of the Innocence Project. She returned to San Antonio after graduating and worked as a journalist with Texas Public Radio. After several years on air, she went on to start one of San Antonio's most successful education projects, Literacy San Antonio, and established their signature program, Essay Reads. She works with her family company, Alamo Fireworks, where she leads government and community relation efforts while maintaining a consulting business where she's currently in conflict resolution training for her certification in mediation and arbitration. Selena has been married to her high school sweetheart, Luke, since 2007, and they have 3 children, Olivia, 10, Jack, 7, and 4-month-old Henry. We've also got Valerie Reifert, she, her. And Valerie is the executive director of Radical Registrars SATX. Radical Registrars SATX is a grassroots collection of volunteer deputy registrars with a mission of increasing voter registration rates and voter participation in elections through awareness and education. Valerie was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas as well, on the city's northeast side. She is a wife and a mother to a 3.5-year-old son. And when she's not being an activist or an executive director, Valerie is coaching children's gymnastics and enjoys exercising, yoga, and brunch. Thank you both for joining us today. I'm really honored to have you with us. And it's a lot of taking out our time on a Sunday. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to talk to you guys today. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. So our session today is meant to be an open discussion on uniting as Texans to vote Greg Abbott and other Republicans not acting in the interest of Texans out of office. So we recognize that people of many parties, including Republicans, are angry at the state of our state and welcome any Texan into these sessions. If you've got any questions, let's go ahead and put them in any Q&A session, and I'll ask those questions at the end of our open discussion. So I'll start with our first question. Texas has a diverse citizenry, which leads to a diverse group of interests. Many times we see diverse groups branch off because they feel their interests are not being heard. What can we as Texans do to remove Abbott from office and avoid these divisions? Selena, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us here this afternoon. And, I think this is one of the crux of the strategies that are being developed right now as we go into 2022 is how do I identify the commonalities among Texans? And there really are so many. And I think that's what we need to focus on is bridging those gaps where, there has been a concentrated effort on behalf of many Republicans in leadership to create divisiveness and to identify those things that make us different. And, I would argue, and so would many other Texans, that there's so much more that brings us together together, so much more that we have in common. Many of us who are involved in this particular group, for example, came together because we're concerned with our children having the best possible experience in our public education system. And I think that's a common concern a lot of Texans have. So I think organizing around common concerns, issues that affect all Texans, if not many, and simply calling out the fact that there is a concentrated effort to stoke that division and call it for what it is, right? It's wrong for Texans. It's wrong to pit people against each other. And so to be actively engaged in a way that is going to bring us together is something we're going to all have to focus on.
Yeah, I think Selena, you covered that perfectly, but it's definitely going to take working together, uniting, and all remembering the common purpose, like what brought us together in the first place. What brought you out in 2020 to vote? If you went out to protest, what brought you out there? What brought you out to the Women's March? Like just thinking about the what is it that drives you, and keeping that at the forefront of it is going to be of most importance for this.
Thank you both. All right, so question 2. What do you believe are the biggest challenges voters wanting politicians like Greg Abbott out of office face in the coming election year? Valerie, want to go first?
Yeah, well, with the passing of SB1, I think we're definitely going to see what that means, especially with these, poll watchers who are going to be in place. So definitely probably some more hurdles, but what's going to get us over those hurdles is though our collective and our knowledge and us just being empowered to not be afraid to go out and do this, because I don't believe there would be so much trying to keep us from voting if what we were doing was not working. So just kind of keeping that in mind too. But I'm interested to see what next year brings, but I'm also very prepared to, empower and prepare our people to go out there and be able to vote informed and vote very confidently too.
Selena?
Yeah, I think Val is absolutely right. Having limitations placed on the ability to vote is going to be significant, whether that's someone who's currently registered or someone who's registering for the first time and embarking on this experience. But I think even before we get to the voting booth, one of the things that we're going to have to combat is misinformation, right? Making sure that we are ourselves informed, that we're looking critically at information that's being presented to us, identifying reliable and reasonable sources. If something sounds fishy, it probably is, right? So engaging our critical thinking skills and being prepared to articulate what misinformation looks like to those around us so that they don't fall in those same traps.
Thinking about misinformation leads me to a different question that we haven't really considered this session, but what have you seen as a really good technique to combat misinformation? That is something that as somebody who sees a lot of misinformation going on, I have a bit of a hard time finding the right mechanism to combat it. What have you both used to combat misinformation when you've seen it?
The truth. It's definitely the truth. The truth, the facts are facts and truth is truth. And, some people have a different relationship with the truth, but the truth will always just be that. And so that's what I found helping out, especially with the Prop B campaign that was going on in San Antonio, with the misinformation that was being spread here with that. And it was just like, well, you see us down here talking to you and giving you information, and you see they're standing up here just over there waving. They don't have anything to say because they don't have any facts to go with their words that they're saying. And so definitely the truth and facts, receipts, like going back and be like, so where'd you get that from? Where'd you find that from? Like, oh, because this quick Google right here, let me know, bam, so but having that, and that's something that, we radical registrars prides ourselves on, is empowering our community with the knowledge to know exactly what is going on. We even made a post about how some of these Republican lawmakers they were recorded saying why they were wanting to pass SB1. And it was for none of those reasons. It wasn't for voter security. They said out of their mouth so that what happened in Georgia would not happen in Texas. And so providing those receipts and links to what these people have said is going to be of importance. So definitely make sure you're following radical registrars and other organizations who are putting the League of Women Voters, people who are putting out facts and truths out there, and making sure that you are empowered with the knowledge.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, nonpartisan organizations like Radical Registrars, League of Women Voters, there are a number of organizations that are reputable that do their research, right? They identify those primary sources, sometimes, as Val pointed out, the individual themselves saying it, right? And, you know, one thing that I think is sometimes a double-edged sword, right, is we all have you know, access to recording devices these days. And so again, though, it's about being mindful about how those are being utilized. You know, there are lots of opportunities to still, I think, take things out of context. So it's still about being thoughtful. It's still about thinking, you know, critically about what it is you're hearing. And again, if it sounds fishy, it probably is.
Thanks, ladies. All right, so our next question that I've got is, so in the last few election cycles, we've seen Republicans choose to align and work together to vote their officially nominated candidates in after messy primaries. So we saw this with Trump, where many Republicans that seemed progressive or moderate chose to back him in order to ensure that their common interests stayed protected. Many of us on the other side consider this party over politics, and we don't support that platform. But how do we unite behind one candidate without feeling like we're compromising our values? Selena?
Yeah, you know, I would argue that this is a strategic strength that one party has over the other. And that's really what it boils down to, is identifying the strategies that are going to bring people together. And also remembering, too, that candidates themselves are people. They're human. And in the process of not only running for office, but should they get the opportunity to serve and represent individuals, they should be learning as much as they can about those individuals that they're representing. And hence, possibly also changing their minds about the opinions and values that they hold. So if someone doesn't have as, you know, much information about a particular issue or cause that you hold dear or that you value, take the opportunity to engage them in conversation, educate them. Our candidates and our representatives should be taking every opportunity to learn from their constituents, because no one else is more of an expert on your life than you.
Val?
Yeah, that was great, Selena. But yeah, I think when it comes to the other side being able to do that, and you know, the moderate or progressive Republicans who ended up, you know, backing Trump, I just question their core values. You know, like, what were they really ever rooted in anything that had any real meaning to it, to be able to just, you know, follow his lead like that. But yeah, I definitely believe with what we're going to have to do is coming together coalition style, and just building from there, spreading the truths, making sure that we are all on one accord, though. And like I said before, just remembering what is at the core of our values. Like for me, it's humanity, and honoring other people's humanity and letting them be human and seeing them as such and living in that way. And if there are candidates who don't believe in people's humanity because of who they look, what they look like, or who they love, then they're not aligned with my values at all. And so it's very easy for me to make that choice. But yeah, I do think it'd be in our best interest to absolutely just align like that, and remembering the what and the why, what brought us out here in the first place.
So as I'm thinking about this, I do have a question. It's a little bit off track, but let's say that in 2022, we find that the person that we may need to vote for doesn't align with our own party preference. How do we overcome that personal obstacle as people that may align with a specific party?
Yeah. in some cases, someone from your party preference may not even be on the ballot, right? It could be an uncontested race, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go out and vote. I'd say, on the contrary, learn as much as you can from those individuals and find that common ground. What is the issue that you can connect on? What is it that you guys do have, a common core concern about? I can guarantee you that people being connected in nature and wanting to be, wanting to have something in common, that is a part of who we are. And I think that, even if there's someone who you absolutely cannot find anything in common with at all, you know, I'm reminded of this exercise we did in elementary school, where when we were in the first weeks of school and you would meet a new student class, you'd have to learn about them and find things that you have in common. And it's an exercise that we forget to do as adults. We put ourselves into categories that make us comfortable, right? That help solidify our own viewpoints and values. And sometimes we need to go outside of that in order to make progress, right? And in order to sometimes understand people and potentially have sway over their own decision making.
Yeah, I think, well, this takes me back to the phrase, a confused mind always says no. And so it's like, when you don't know, you just will usually say no, because, the information and the knowledge isn't there. So definitely backdooring what Selena said is just, finding out as much as you can about this candidate and seeing exactly where you do align, but then also thinking about what is for the greater good. And if the greater good is any other functioning adult than who we have, then that's who we're going to have to go for the greater good, with our healthcare and our lives at stake. So I think it just comes back to that, is what's for the greatest good of all and not just for you.
Thanks, guys. So let's go back to the situation of a messy primary, where we all kind of, after that primary, find ourselves really passionate about one candidate, and then that candidate ends up losing and we have to follow behind a different candidate. So how do we find ways to convey the message that unity after a messy primary is important and necessary to achieve the common goal of ousting Republicans like Greg Abbott?
Yeah, I think to get something we've never had, we have to do something we've never done. And so, whatever that is for you personally, I think that's what we need to do. I think it needs to be personal and as a party. And, as much as you, took the quiz and you are Elizabeth Warren, like y'all align, y'all are each other, but, she didn't make the cut, then you have to go for what is for the greatest good of everybody else. Like, even though that person, your person didn't get it, but I really think it is just knocking the dust off, it gets dirty sometimes, but people want to win, and you want to see a candidate who wants to win. You want to see somebody who has that fire in their belly, and I think that's also something that we need to remember too. These people are human and they want this job and they have fire in them, and especially the people who want to do what's right. That's who we just need to back and align ourselves with. And so, especially when it comes to a certain candidate, we have the power to get behind these candidates. Money talks in politics, unfortunately. And if you can't do by block walking and canvassing, then definitely donate, which I feel like I'm getting somewhere else with this. But yeah, go ahead, Selena.
Yeah, having been in a contested primary myself, also having advised candidates and ushered them through some contentious primaries in the aftermath. Ultimately, it is all about ensuring that people come together. So, on the one hand, I do think it's incumbent upon the candidates themselves to dust themselves off, right? Put on a brave face sometimes, because it is a very personal thing to run, to put yourself out there and take time away from your family and your job to do that. But really get behind the candidate that can bring things forward. But for those of us who've also backed individuals who did not make it out of the primary for whatever reason, I think it's important about recognizing the hard work that they've put in and encouraging others to also, sort of put your big person pants on and do the work. Because I mean, at the end of the day, Val's right. If we're not block walking, if we're not hitting doors, if we're not talking to voters, then we're not making the strides that we need to in order to create impact. And that's the goal, right? At the end of the day, it's to vote someone in that we feel like we can align with. And I think it would be naive to think that we would align perfectly with everybody. And of course, we always have our preferences. But if you're not going to engage, then you're going to have a harder time, I think, getting your values and your preferences and your concerns, getting them heard. So they say the Democratic Party is a big tent, for example. Lots of people are fall under that. And I think that remains true. And I think there's always more than one kind of Democrat, more than one kind of candidate. And it falls down to identifying those people and taking the time to get to know them as people.
Thank you. So in both of your experiences, what have you seen as one major issue that divides Texas voters? And regarding that issue, what do you think we can all do to help resolve that issue? I'll start with you, Selena.
I mean, I wish there was just one major issue, right? But I think the reality is, for a lot of people, politics is personal. And so the issues can run the gamut. But I think rather than finding issues that divide people, we have to focus on those issues that bring us together. So again, if those issues are, ensuring that our children have the best, public education that we can possibly afford, then that's an issue that can bring people together. If it's about making sure that people have an opportunity to have healthcare and coverage, and can go to work and go to school with a full belly, and those things that I think to Val's earlier point just imply our humanity, then that's really what we need to focus on. I think we're past trying to divvy up who's going to be the best on certain issues. I think it's more about making sure that all those candidates or individuals who want to serve are as informed as possible about our various issues that are important to us. But at the end of the day, it's all about finding commonality.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Selena said, because, especially with San Antonio being one of the most economically segregated cities in the US, issues, especially in regarding money, is going to affect everybody so very differently. And especially, the people without it or with the least of it. And so to say which issue divides us most, I mean, it just depends on, the day, the time, and the time of day and all that. But I definitely think, focusing on the what and the core of the issues, and like what drove Texans out in, numbers that we hadn't seen in 30 years last year, like thinking about that, and then just trying to duplicate those efforts again. And how can we just make our reach more, like who else can we reach? Who else can we talk to, to get more of those people who care out there. But yeah, definitely together, because who knows with the division.
Thank you. So the adage, "it takes a village," seems to be really important and central to our discussion today. So what can we, as members of Mothers Against Greg Abbott, do to ensure that every Texan wanting change votes and votes together? Go ahead, Val. You'll take this one first.
Yeah. You know, we were all raised by a generation of parents who told us not to discuss religion and not to discuss politics. And now these topics have become so taboo instead of being things that we can just openly discuss amongst each other. So I definitely think breaking the taboo and speaking about politics and just asking somebody their why. What is your why? Why do you vote like this? You know, like, why do you want to, if somebody wants to keep him in office, why do you want to keep him in office? What is he doing for you? I think something that's working well and people like my favor is that Abbott is really doing a lot to hit everybody. Like he's like the kid on the playground throwing rocks at absolutely everybody, you know, starting with the dark people and then definitely throwing sand and all that on women and all that. So he's really doing a lot to affect so many people, but just finding out what people care about and then showing them that this is what you care about. Well, you voting is your voice and use that so you can get what you want. So you can make sure that you have government that is reflective of you and the things that you care most dearly. And so definitely to the point that I was getting to earlier, though, with it taking a village, we've got to do something we have never done to get something that we have never had. We haven't had the best governors here and definitely not a Democratic one. And so what can we do differently is just about everything. The unity aspect, coming together. I think we'll get to it later, but a call to action is the 2 Ds. You're either doing or you're donating. It's those two things, because when you're donating, that's helping the doers, you know, for the people who can or too busy or whatever the case may be. But it's definitely the donating or the doing. Get yourself on a monthly donation schedule. Let it just pull from your card every month. Start with the grassroots, because it's not, nothing's trickling down to us, you know, like you've got to start with the grassroots people because nothing's coming down here, you know, just organically and naturally like that. But getting out, you know, like there's a reason why y'all, Mothers Against Greg Abbott has, what is it, like 20,000, like y'all have thousands and thousands of people. So we just have to use this. Another D is getting deputized, okay? Doing something you've never done. So get deputized and get you and your group text, you and your immediate community registered to vote, and making sure that y'all are going to go vote as a group. We like to vote early, go ahead and get it done. And that's what we do, you know? So definitely doing something we've never done to get something we haven't had yet.
Yeah, Val was hitting it straight on the head, right? You know, a village is all about relationships. And, you know, yeah, just go on your phone right now. You know, who are the top 5 people that you're texting with on a regular basis? Have you asked them what their voting habits are? You have an opportunity there. You already have an existing relationship. Trust is already built. I would challenge people to take that trust and take it to the next level and engage in conversation about what's important, where your values lie, and how that translates to the ballot box. And once you start creating that relationship, that conversation, you can take it to the next 5 people and the next 5 and encourage them to do the same.
So we talk about relationships and we talk about people that are close to us. Let's say that we've got people that are close to us that tell you that they don't feel that they should vote. They've become apathetic, right? They feel like their voice isn't being heard. They feel like they aren't going to make a difference. How do you engage people that feel that they are not going to be heard and get them to those polls in 2022?
Yeah, so this is where politics become personal again, right? You know, this is an opportunity to share with them why you vote, why it's important to you, and to ask them to do it for you. So whether it's a parent, a sibling, a neighbor, that relationship clearly has value. And to place the value of that relationship onto how you see the rest of the world and how you vote and how the world responds to your values is another opportunity. people I think are having a hard time sometimes trusting what they see out there in general. But leveraging these relationships that we have with each other is critically important. And so, it's just about starting those conversations. So, and it doesn't have to be a difficult start. You don't have to say, are you Republican? Are you Democrat? Or did you vote? Did you not vote? When was the last time? It can be a conversation about what's happening in your neighborhood, right? You can ask, for example, how what do you think about the garbage pickup, right? They start with municipal issues, things that are nonpartisan, perhaps. If everything's great, great. Talk about how wonderful your elected representation is. If it's not so great, maybe talk about, well, what are some things that we can ask people who are tasked with the responsibility of improving these things? What can we do together? Would you be interested in maybe calling them up with me if I were to help you put together a text or a phone, some type of script to talk to them? It doesn't have to be necessarily a problem. It could be about something that's going well. And so I would start from that position. What things that are going well in our community that we have an opportunity to reach out on?
Yeah, definitely, breaking the taboo, finding that common ground. San Antonio, we actually made history by electing Jalen McKee Rodriguez, the first openly gay Black city councilman in Texas. And so I think, for that to even be a thing in 2021 is still kind of mind blowing. But, we have the power within our vote to make history, to make change. And your vote really is your voice, because it's your voice on your healthcare. It's your voice on where you feel your tax dollars should go. It really is your voice. And it's speaking up for yourself. And when you don't vote, when you get apathetic, they're winning because these elected officials who rely on voters don't want us to vote and don't want us to vote informed. And so they want people to grow weary, and they make it more difficult with the hopes of, okay, they're just not going to want to do it. It's too hard. And so just staying persistent and kind of using that, your youthful rebellion, and being like, just because you're making it harder doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. You don't want me to have it, which makes me want it even more. And so here we go. And so just having that attitude about it. But yes, talking and having these conversations and just letting people know, voting is your way to make change and make things actually happen. But if you're waiting every 4 years to do it, you are missing out on some very important local elections that you could feel way sooner than voting every 4 years. And so just getting that information to people and letting them know that, and then letting them know where they can find information. I think about when I was voting in my, late teens, early 20s, and just, not knowing where to find the information. And so letting people know that the information is not, it's hard to find by design, but it doesn't have to be. And so just letting them know where they can go to get this information, letting them know you can write down your choices on a sheet of paper and go in and vote informed. There's no reason why that should not be common knowledge, but it's not, and that's done by design. So yes, conversations and doing it together.
All right, so we've seen many people over the last few years become voter registrars. We've seen people work on grassroots campaigns. So from both of your experiences, where do you see the greatest need? What do you think that members of Mothers Against Greg Abbott can do to help ensure that every person that's eligible to vote votes in 2022? Valerie?
Yeah, so definitely get deputized. I hold study group sessions where I give you answers and tips and best practices on how to be a VDR. Voter suppression does start with us. If we are not able to go get people registered to vote, then people may not go get registered to vote, because it's not one of the easiest things to do, especially in Texas. And so learning, and voter registration is a very unforgiving industry. Actually, Bexar County elections just added another layer of difficulty so if you turn in a form that has any issue on it, instead of getting corrected and being, taught how to do better next time, your deputization is now getting stripped for 30 days. And then they're making you come back and do an in-person training with them, which I don't feel like the punishment is really fitting the crime, especially when it comes to you being a volunteer deputy registrar. Nobody's getting paid to do this. This is all just being done, just out of our want to do it. So definitely getting deputized to get people registered to vote is super important. People get purged off of voter rolls, like that happens, and that's a real thing. And so making sure that somebody, especially somebody who's an infrequent voter or newly registered, making sure that they are actually registered, checking through the Secretary of State's website, and then making sure that they know where to get this information from. But if every member of Mothers Against Greg Abbott got deputized and registered 5 to 10 people to vote, we could make a very huge difference. So just knowing that you really do have the power within yourself to make this happen. But again, like I said, if you're not a boots on the ground person, if you're not the most comfortable with going out and talking to people or don't have the most free time, then definitely make those donations and get that money to an organization who can hire a canvasser or hire a phone banker or hire somebody to help out their organization and reach the people that you can't necessarily do yourself.
Yeah, I'd say do everything you possibly can, right? And then that can be a range of things, right? It can be being a BDR volunteer, deputy registrar yourself. That could be, going out and block walking, canvassing for candidates. That can be writing that check, making that monthly contribution. It could be having conversations, with your friend group, with your family members, with your neighbors. It really is about normalizing the conversation around politics, breaking that taboo that it's something that is improper to speak about, and and creating a space that's safe for people to ask questions, right? For those folks who maybe aren't regular voters, it can be a mystifying experience, particularly because we hear a lot of coverage in the news about how things are constantly changing. We want to try to create this idea that it's incredibly easy to go vote. While that might not always feel like the case, we want it to be something that becomes normal to do. I know for a lot of us, it's normal to stand in line for hours to vote, but in some ways that can also be considered a good thing. It means that people are showing up. What it also means is that we have work to do when it comes to creating access to opportunities to vote in areas where people are forced to do that, right? And that's just another layer of engaging with a process that some folks maybe haven't experienced before.
All right, so last question. Do you think that we should have a specific call to action from today's session? And if so, what should it be? Give us some homework. Selena, you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say get out your phone. Who is in your text group? The 5 people that you text to and talk to the most. Have a conversation with them about going to vote. Have a conversation with them about, the fact that there's an election going on right now, right? A lot of people might not be aware of that fact. Certainly, in order to prepare yourself to start those conversations, I would say refer to the resources being supplied by Mothers Against Greg Abbott. Go to the League of Women Voters website. Check out what's going on with radical registrars. So arm yourself with information so that when they almost invariably ask questions, you have information to provide to them right off the bat. These are conversations that sometimes can feel difficult, even if they're not. And if you can arm yourself with information to be able to share with them, it makes it that much easier. And once you've had one conversation, having two conversations is even easier. Three conversations is a piece of cake. Four conversations, it's like you've been doing it your whole life. And by the fifth time, it's second nature, right? So it's also about practice. And so even if it doesn't go exactly how you imagine it might the first or second time, or even the third time, continue doing it, continue having these conversations and follow up. Right. So once you've had these conversations with these 5 people in your phone that you talk to all the time, follow up with them. Ask them, hey, did you guys have a chance to go by and vote? Or hey, did you read this article? Just make it a common part of the way that you engage and interact.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, I definitely touched on my call to action is, which are the 2 Ds, either donate or do. And which all comes back to let's do something we've never done to get something that we've never had. And it really is all hands on deck, type of approach to it, and just coming together and unifying as one. So if you would like to donate, you can donate to groups like Radical Registrars, SATX in San Antonio. There is Somos Tejas out in Dallas, who do some amazing work with trying to bring neighborhoods together. They've actually raised voter turnout by almost 200% in some areas by just going out and just creating neighborhood alliances, like where homeowners associations were really created to keep Black and Brown people out of making decisions for their neighborhoods. Create your own, but definitely, and then just however you best receive information, like maybe try to do that to somebody, but get your information and just share your knowledge. And if you don't know, don't be afraid to refer to somebody who may or may not have the answers. But yes, so we're either donating monthly to organizations who are out here doing the work every single day, or we are getting deputized and we're doing anyways, because we're having conversations and we are removing the taboo from talking about politics and talking about what's going on, and just normalizing it and making it something that we can do just very simply, to just talk about humanity and how we can best keep everybody, on the right track.
Thank you guys so much. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. If anybody has a question they want to ask, I have no further questions for myself. Does anybody else have a question they wanted to ask? You guys can unmute yourselves and ask it if you'd like. No questions? Okay. Well,
I
thank
have
you.
a question for Val real quick.
Yes.
So what inspired you to get involved with Radical Registrars in particular?
Yeah, so last year, it was the protest with what happened with George Floyd. And so I didn't actually go out to protest that weekend because I saw the counter protest, and then I got really upset with myself because I was like, oh, I hate not doing anything out of fear, like not acting because I'm afraid of something. And so I went out to the protest on Monday, June 1st, and it started off as a very small group of us, and it turned into something way larger that day. And then I was actually inspired by whenever the Popeyes chicken sandwich came out and people were making such a big deal about it, I saw on the internet that somebody was like in the line, like while people were waiting in the drive-thru, they were getting people registered to vote. And so when I saw all the people out of the protest, I was like, oh, somebody should be out here getting these people registered to vote. And so that somebody just ended up being me. And so I went and got deputized on June 3rd before I went out to my next protest. And I saw people on the steps getting people registered to vote. And I went and asked them if they needed some help. And they said, yeah. And so that's really where Radical Registrars course, began, but I really did just kept answering the call. I mean, I'd lost my job, and so I just kept answering the call to get people registered to vote out in the communities and speak to people, which just made me have to get more information. I was like, oh, now y'all think I know what I'm talking about. Okay, I was like, let me figure this out. And so just, learning everything that I have this past year. I mean, I went to college not knowing what the mayor did. I was like, mayor of the city or the state? And everybody looked at me like, girl. So I've come a very long way. Uh, I've come a very long way. But yeah, that's really where we got started from, was from the protests and really being inspired by whoever was getting people registered to vote in the Popeyes line.
I love that. I love that you took something that almost kept you from making an impact and turned it into a way to create action, right? That is exactly practicing what you preach. And I'm for one so grateful that you do it, and inspired that you have so many folks who are coming along. So I congratulate. That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Michiko, you have a question?
I do have a question, and my question is that we all know how divisive times are right now, and we all have family or friends that are very hardcore Trump loyalists. And how do we interact with those people in our lives?
Yeah, I feel pretty fortunate that in my at least immediate family, that hasn't been an issue. But I've definitely encountered people who, I've had working relationships with, where, I could allow it to change my approach to them. But I think going forward with a feeling of compassion is one of the best ways to engage. This isn't about, individuals who I think continue to, hold tight to this Trump narrative. I don't think they do it out of hate necessarily. I think they do it out of fear. And so you think about how you're feeling when you're afraid. You want someone who's going to pull you out of that dark place and show you some compassion. And I think being able to communicate with them in a way that is patient, which is not always easy, and caring, and with concern, right? You can show concern for them, and the fact that the decisions they're making are having perhaps a direct impact on your life, or the life of your family, your friends, and your neighbors, or your community. I've seen people change their mannerisms and start considering what their next acts are going to be. I can't say for fact that they change the way they vote, because I don't typically ask people how they vote, but I do know that I've seen them change how they talk with each other, how they talk to others, how they post online, simply by having a compassionate conversation about why they believe what they do, and trying to be genuinely curious about how they came to that conclusion, and understanding them. It's kind of going back to this idea of respecting the human in each of us, right? And oftentimes it takes being what we might consider being the better or the bigger person, because it can sometimes feel like we ourselves are being dehumanized based on the things that they may be purporting, believing, reposting. But I also think that we need to practice self-care. And if it is truly a relationship that cannot be preserved, and they're incapable of seeing the human back in you yourself, then it might be time to consider whether or not that's a relationship that's healthy to have in your life.
Yeah, I do unfortunately have a very close family member who is who is of that belief. And so it's been hard. It's been very difficult, especially, this being a Black woman, and just like the how. But, I know from what I'm experiencing with this family member is that they have a lot of issues and turmoil within themselves, and I think when we think about it, those people who are like most damaged, they always kind of seem to group up with each other with like one kind of common belief or something behind it. And so I'm kind of, going through it in that way. But definitely you're so right with the self-care and just, yes, definitely self-caring about you and your boundaries and what you can take. And then, yeah, having that patience and compassion with them, because, in my situation, I think it's a direct reflection of just, not really truly having love for self, which is why this person feels the way that they feel. And so that can allow me to feel, like not angry at them, but more just like feel bad for them, and just, hoping that maybe someday that, something can change them and just, me just keep living the way that I am and doing what I'm doing and, just letting my light shine in that way. But I don't think I have a great answer for it. I'm still trying to navigate it, like almost every day. But, just staying true to self and what you can take and respecting yourself and your boundaries, because at the end of the day, that's all we can control is us.
Thank you both. So I want to say thank you again. Before everybody got on, Val showed me her earrings. So Val, can you show them? They say vote. I love them.
They're really cute.
Those are adorable.
I had one question, Vanessa.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Nancy Thompson here. I am the founder of Mothers Against Greg Abbott, and I had a question. You may have answered it already, though. But for the 22 election, for many, many years, we've heard that the Latinos were going to be the place that we needed to register as many Latinos as possible. But for the upcoming 22 election, where are there pockets where the population has changed a little bit and where should we focus on getting people to be registered? So like, are there going to be a whole lot of younger people for the next election versus older people? Like, where can we put some of our focus to where it could tip the scales towards Democratic Party?
Yeah, I definitely believe the youth that I'm meeting, they are very hungry and very, ready and anxious to do this. But I definitely think it's going to be the youth. I think we discussed a collective effort, but I think definitely getting out into those rural areas, they've actually like reached out to me asking for some help, but getting out into those rural areas, because Texas, it's not that we're a red state, but we are truly just a voter suppressed state. So just really going out and finding those pockets and getting them the information that they need to one, get enough voting centers, out for them to be able to get to them so their votes, can be made. And then also just getting them activated and active and empowered to go out and vote. So definitely the youth and the young people for sure. And then just any and everywhere that we can.
Yeah, I would echo, definitely encouraging young people to register to vote, identifying perhaps new to Texans or non-native Texans and engaging them in the process of how to vote. And yes, I mean, we do still have a need to engage the Latino population, that the growth is undeniable. But I think one place that might take a little bit of data mining that could be a potential area to invest in are looking at those folks who consistently vote in presidential elections, but not midterm elections. They already know how to vote. They know the process. They're registered themselves. They just need that kind of kick in the pants to go when they don't normally go, right? It's like having someone, they work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Just how about adding a Tuesday in there, right? They just need someone to reach out to them and tell them, hey, this is an important election as well. I'm keeping an eye and making sure that, every individual who has the opportunity takes advantage of it to go and vote. And I think that's a real population of folks who, hey, it's a presidential year, I'm going to go vote, but any other time, it just doesn't occur to them. So we need to make it habitual. Vote every single time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'll go ahead and close it out. Everyone, I hope you guys have a great Sunday evening. Thank you, Val. Thank you, Selena, so much for joining us. We are just very glad to have had you guys. And this has been recorded, so we're going to be able to play this back for everyone, so that people that didn't have an opportunity to join today, right now, are going to be able to see this and hopefully give them some information and some tools to use in the 22 election. So let's all really hope that we can work towards getting Greg Abbott out of office. That's a real big goal for me, and I hope it is for everyone else.
Thank you,
Yes.
Vanessa. It's a pleasure to meet you, Val, and for all you. And Nancy, my gosh, for starting this and sticking to your guns and creating this movement. I mean, kudos to you.
Well, I can't wait to meet both of you in person. So
Looking
one
forward
of
to
these days. Yeah, San Antonio. Happy.
Yes.
Come to San Antonio, come to San Anto. We're waiting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you
Can't
so
wait to meet you.
much.